Journalists who attended the event were struck by Walt's appearance. Walt looked gaunt and drawn, but no one suspected there was something far more serious ahead.
Over the last few months, we've been looking at some of the final projects of the true visionary, Walt Disney. From those that are now seen as incredible successes such as the 1964 World's Fair, down to those that sadly never saw the light of day, including Walt Disney's Riverfront Square. Interestingly though, Walt Disney's final announcement and press conference was for something not really in the realm of themed entertainment or animation. On the 18th of September 1966, around a month after the official announcement of Walt Disney World, a busload of reporters traveled up the windy roads of the North Californian mountains, where at the top, they were greeted by none other than Walt Disney himself, who would officially announce a Disney-owned and operated ski resort up in the mountains. For Review Time, I'm Luke, and this is the story of Walt's final project, the Disney's Mineral King Ski Resort. At first thought, a ski resort may seem a bizarre undertaking for a man most known for animation and theme parks, but Walt himself was an avid skier. In 1931, Walt's doctor suggested he take up some form of exercise to help relieve the stress of his work, and after trying everything from golf, swimming, badminton, and even boxing, Walt found his sportsman calling whilst on a family vacation to Yosemite National Park. Here Walt found the winter sports more to his liking, and by the time he left he had learnt to both ski and figure skate. Walt's love for winter sports would continue to be a way out of the insanity that was his work life, and he further grew his love of the sports by serving as the director of pageantry at the 1960 Winter Olympics in Squaw Valley, California. At the announcement of the resort in September 1966, Walt Disney was quoted as saying, "When I first saw Mineral King 5 years ago, I thought it was one of the most beautiful spots I have ever seen, and we want to keep it that way." To Walt Disney, that meant an immaculately designed alpine village which would both preserve and showcase the natural beauty of the valley. Disney's Mineral King Ski Resort would have been located on the outskirts of Sequoia National Park, around halfway between LA and San Francisco, and would not have been like any other ski resort. Walt wanted to take what he had learnt from developing the fantasy and wonder of Disneyland and apply that to the natural wonders of the national park through an all-seasons resort that would focus on alpine sports in the winter and sightseeing during the summer. The plans for the $35 million resort included 14 ski lifts that would take you up to explore much of the 7,900-foot valley and its surrounding 12,500-foot mountains. Once you were done exploring the slopes, you could settle into the self-contained ski village, complete with a chapel, convenient shops, restaurants, a conference center, and ice rink, as well as budget lodging facilities. For those not on a budget though, the resort would have also featured 2 large hotels, a heliport, and a series of 10 restaurants spread throughout the valley and atop the surrounding peaks. The 2 most exciting of which would have been a coffee shop perched atop Eagle's Crest Ridge and an animatronic dinner theater with singing robotic bears that would eventually find their home around 5 years later in the Country Bear Jamboree. Whilst Disney knew that ski operations alone wouldn't be profitable, his focus on visitor services and the overall guest experience meant that the project would see a projected revenue of $600 million in the resort's first 10 years of operation alone. In order to preserve the natural beauty of the site, Disney's plans called for camouflaging the ski lifts, hiding the village from the valley entrance, and even placing service facilities underground beneath the village. The natural beauty would have been further preserved by not allowing visitor vehicles into the valley, and would instead have to be left in a 2,500 vehicle parking lot before being taken up to the valley by public transport. However, the road leading up to the parking lot would have to be heavily redeveloped to the tune of a $25 million upgrade to be paid for by the government. the US Forest Service had awarded a preliminary permit to Walt Disney Productions to complete a satisfactory plan, before a permanent 30-year permit would be assigned, all of which was contingent on the construction of the all-weather 25-mile highway. As 1966 progressed, so did the plans. In October, the governor of California announced a $3 million federal grant to put towards the road's construction, and his next step was to apply for a further $9 million federal loan before seeking out the remaining balance from the California legislature.
We hope that we can develop it in such a way that the families can come up here and have access to this great, wonderful wilderness area.
Journalists who attended the event were struck by Walt's appearance.
But as 1966 came to a close, so did the life of the great man Walt Disney. On December 15th, 1966, just 10 days after his 65th birthday, Walt Disney passed away. The Mineral King Resort announcement was his last public appearance, and it looked as if the project was destined to be the final lasting reminder of his truly great vision and creativity. Or so it seemed at the time. The first change to the project after Walt's passing came in 1969, when WED Enterprises changed the building designs from 1960s style structures to that of a more traditional Swiss alpine village. This new master plan was approved by the US Forest Service on January 27, 1969, and skis were expected to hit the slopes for the first time in the 1973 ski season. Though no construction would begin for a few years, and very little was heard about the project again until May of 1972, when Walt Disney Productions announced the final major revision to their Mineral King plans. The $35 million resort would be scaled back to a $15 million resort, with only 10 ski lifts, with the expected reasonings being due to Walt Disney World recently exceeding its expected budget of $70 million by $330 million extra. These changes and scaling back of projects was common for Disney at the time. They had just lost their fearless leader, and in some ways the company didn't know how to proceed forward and seemed to stop taking big risks. The biggest change in this new master plan was that access to the resort would now involve a Disney staple of a railway to be operated by them without profit. This was done to appease Ronald Reagan, who had removed the all-season access road from the plan, instead recommending alternate access methods. However, in the end, this was seen to be the final blow for the project, and further input from the government with a stop work until a new environmental assessment was complete in 1976 was the final nail in the coffin for Mineral King. Even though the US Forest Service attempted to resurrect the plans in 1977, Disney had already moved on and currently had their eyes set on a different ski resort north of Lake Tahoe. And with that, Walt Disney's final project was officially cancelled. Today, people say that maybe it was a blessing in disguise that the plans were cancelled. Sequoia Valley National Park boasts the worst air quality of all national parks and is one of the most visited. Both things that I'm sure a Disney-owned ski resort that expected around 1 million guests a year would have only made worse. Ultimately, the Lake Tahoe ski resort plans were cancelled as well, and even today, though many others have been proposed, including Disney Wharf at Sydney Harbour, the only Disney resorts that exist outside of a theme park vicinity are Disney's Hilton Head Island Resort in South Carolina and Aulani in Hawaii, showing that Disney likes to stick to what it knows and does best. This story wasn't a battle between the fantasy forces of good and evil, but just a balancing act of protecting nature and allowing people to enjoy it. A balancing act that Disney and the Forest Service could never get quite right. Ultimately, Disney's plans were too large, requiring a highway that would have ultimately removed from the natural beauty the plans were trying so hard to keep. Whilst the revised plan with the railway may have been the perfect balance for the project, by then it was too late. So our ideals of skiing around a Disney-owned ski resort will have to stay in our imaginations for now, with our plans to visit Walt Disney's Riverfront Square and our agendas to live in Walt's experimental prototype community of tomorrow. For Review Time, I'm Luke. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing.